NBC says senior executives at the network were unaware of Matt Lauer's long-time alleged sexual harassment prior to his firing. The findings are part of an internal probe following the firing of the Today Show anchor. The report claims that all 4 women who came forward never alerted their managers. Lauer was fired just days after the first complaint was filed back in November. And a week prior to that, CBS This Morning co-host and 60 Minutes contributor Charlie Rose was also fired following decades of alleged sexual misconduct. With more on the investigation is Paul Farhi. He's a media reporter for The Washington Post. Good to see you, Paul.
Good morning, Vladimir.
So the network did confirm in its investigation that 4 women complained about Matt Lauer, but walk us through the timing of those complaints.
That's right. The first complaint they say they got was in November, mid-November of last year. That's the first they heard. They investigated it. Lauer supposedly confessed to the allegation against him. They fired Lauer on November 27th. Subsequently, 3 more women came forward with complaints. And that's that, according to NBC's investigation. No one knew and no one was aware before then.
So what else did investigators look at during this probe, and what did they find?
Well, they spoke with 68 different people, former, current people at NBC News, managers, colleagues, Today Show people at the network, and they asked them, were you aware of any kind of inappropriate behavior by Lauer over the 20-plus years that he was a co-host of or anchor on the Today Show? They say in their report that they found nothing that indicated anything before this November date. And so they had nothing to go on, and no managers were aware of anything happening before this November occurrence.
So what did investigators learn about this button that was under Matt Lauer's desk that allowed him to sort of, I guess, lock the door? Although I guess it should be pointed out that many high-level executives have buttons like this.
Yes, this was one of the sidelines of this story when it broke back in November, that he had a button on his desk that allowed him to lock himself and whoever he was with inside the office. As it turns out, it doesn't lock people in. It's a button that releases a magnet that allows someone sitting at their desk to close the door. A number of executives at NBC and Rockefeller Center have this button, but it doesn't lock the door. Anybody who wanted to walk in could have walked in. We debunked that back in November, but this sort of became urban legend that he had this button to create his own little prison or fortress for himself. Not true.
Yeah, and I'm glad that we were able to get you to clarify that, just in case anybody was wondering. The other thing, Paul, I'm curious about Ann Curry. She has made comments to the press that she did alert management about issues with regards to Matt Lauer. Was she spoken to, and if so, what did she say, and what did they find?
Yes, they did speak with her. It turns out that her complaint was rather vague. She was sworn to secrecy by a woman who said Matt Lauer had harassed her. She did not reveal the woman's name, and she did not say who she spoke with, but she said she had alerted management in sort of a general way about Lauer. Keep an eye on this guy. He's bad news. This is back in 2013. The report says that the management got this information but had nothing really to act on. And so it just became a general warning as opposed to time, date, place, and specific allegation.
Paul, is it possible, there's been some backlash to this report because there are a number of people who say, look, it's really difficult for a company to investigate itself. There's a whole host of issues, including the fact that people might feel uncomfortable talking to someone else who is part of the company. Should outside investigators conduct these kinds of investigations?
Yes, I think so. You need an arm's length, independent investigation to really get at something that's going to be truly credible. I do compliment NBC in the sense that they did an investigation and they did release it to the public. CBS has not done that. ABC has not done that. Fox has not done that. You can talk all you want about an independent investigation, but there have been a number of sexual harassment complaints in which the networks and and news organizations generally have not released any findings to the public. They've released statements, we vowed to clean up our act, etc., but they have never released an internal document like this. And so NBC deserves some limited amount of praise for putting it out there and letting the world see their dirty laundry.
Indeed. And Paul, before I let you go, let's talk briefly about former NBC News anchor Tom Brokaw. He's also been accused of sexually harassing a female colleague back in the 1990s. What have you learned about this allegation?
Well, what we've learned is that NBC is sort of standing by Tom Brokaw. He got a statement of support from several dozen women at NBC News attesting to his character and his upstanding nature, but they put a lid on that since then, and we don't know what kind of internal investigation, if any, is taking place. So Brokaw, who is, truly one of the great anchors in television history, may well be able to get past this without a whole lot of scrutiny being taken within NBC News.
And finally, Paul, just real quick, the president tweeting yesterday about revoking press privileges for reporters. What did you just make, briefly about that sort of, there's always existed between this president and the press. It's not even fair to say that. President Obama had also a very contentious relationship with the press, but he didn't tweet about it, and he didn't suggest that reports that were not to his liking were fake and threatened to revoke press credentials. What do you make of that tweet?
Yeah, it's disturbing, but it's sort of on brand for Trump. He is always attacking the press, always claiming that we're fake news when it's news that he just doesn't like. He has revoked credentials before during the campaign. He has taken no steps to do so as president. I'll chalk this up to rhetoric until I see otherwise. Otherwise, it's just more red meat for his base.
Paul Farhi, always great to have you, my friend. Thank you very much.
Thank you.